It's the Kyle Heimann Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Heimann here with Andrea Serrani.
Saints of the Week.
Saints of the Week. We've got a lot of feast days.
Lots of feast days. Lots of saints celebrating, but exactly 7 days this week.
Okay.
Get it?
Yes, I do.
Anyway, moving on. Today's feast day is Our Lady of Mount Carmel. So happy feast day to all of the Carmelites, anyone who's a third order Carmelite, also anyone who wears a scapular, because it was Our Lady of Mount Carmel who entrusted us with that wonderful devotion. So the history of the Carmelites, the hermits lived on Mount Carmel, which I always sort of pictured as being European, because that's how I pictured everything in church history when I was growing up. But turns out it's in northern Israel near the Fountain of Elijah. So the hermits started living there in the 12th century. They had a chapel dedicated to Our Lady. And then by the 13th century, that community of hermits started to be known as the Brothers of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And then eventually that got shortened to just Carmelites. So the order has always had a special devotion to Mary, including many of its famous saints. St. Teresa of Avila called Carmel the Order of the Virgin. And St. John of the Cross credited Mary with saving him from drowning as a child, leading him to the Carmelites, and helping him escape from prison. Mom's got your back.
Yeah.
St. Therese of the Child Jesus, so St. Teresa Little Flower, believed that Mary cured her from an illness when she was a kid. Mary is close to those Carmelites.
Yeah.
And if you don't already know, or you didn't listen to last week's Truth and Charity episode, there's a tradition that Mary appeared to St. Simon Stock, the leader of the Carmelites, and gave him a scapular, telling him to promote devotion to it. And people who wear the scapular entrust themselves to Mary in a special way. And then this scapular symbolizes her special protection.
It's also symbolic of the habit of the Carmelites.
Right, right.
The fabric of the scapular.
Yep, exactly. It's funny because I normally think of Marian feast days as blue, like that you would wear blue on a Marian feast day, but today I just think of brown because it's special. It's a special brown version of Mary today.
Yeah, they usually wear brown habits, this brown scapular.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Carmelites, tomorrow, Tuesday the 17th, the feast day of the Carmelite nuns of Compiègne. 16 Carmelites who were caught up in the French Revolution and martyred. They had been ordered to give up their religious life and stop living by their vows, but they refused. They went to the guillotine singing the Salve Regina. And there's an opera written about them. The dialogue.
What?
Yeah, the Dialogue of the Carmelites by Francois Poulenc.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to recite that answer for you, but I sort of knew that in the back of my mind because it was a Trivia Thursday question a long time ago.
Have you ever seen an opera?
Yeah, a few. I used to go a lot when I was in college to the Miami Opera House. I love a good opera.
I have never been.
Gotta love a good opera. We also also watched them sometimes in music class when I was in grade school. Shout out to my very good music teacher. Yeah. Okay, Wednesday, July 18th, is the feast of Saint Camillus de Lellis.
Nice.
Such a great name. His mother died when he was a child. His father neglected him, and he grew up with an excessive love for gambling. At 17, he was afflicted with the disease of his leg, but got kicked out of the hospital for quarrelsomeness after a few months. Then he became a soldier, but he ended up gambling away everything, all of his money, his weapons, even literally the clothes off of his back.
Whoa.
So he went to the only place that he could find that would take him, a Capuchin friary. So he was inspired by their lives and their sermons. So he dedicated his life and he decided he was going to change his life. He tried to join the friars, but he was too sick. So they kept rejecting him, even though he tried a couple of times. So then he went back to the hospital where he had stayed and gotten kicked out. But this time he was so nice that he just stayed there and devoted the rest of his life to care for the sick. He became friends with St. Philip Neri, and eventually he became a priest. He's one of the patron saints of hospitals, nurses, and the sick.
St. Camillus de Lellis.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes. So happy feast day to nurses and doctors and all hospital workers on Wednesday. Thursday, July 19th, St. Macrina the Younger. Talk about family of saints. Granddaughter of St. Macrina the Elder, sister of St. Basil, St. Gregory of Nyssa, and St. Peter of Sebastia.
Wow.
Holy siblings. She was engaged to be married when she was a child, but then her fiance died, so she decided she'd dedicate her life to God. When her dad died, her and her mom retired to a family estate out in the country and lived a life of prayer and community there. And Macrina became the head of the group when her mother died, and she was especially devoted to studying scripture. So, a saint I had never heard of. Friday is the feast of Saint Apollinaris. He had a lot of evangelization perseverance. According to tradition, St. Peter sent Apollinaris to Ravenna, Italy, as its first bishop. His preaching of the good news was so successful that many people began converting, which made the pagans mad, so they beat him and drove him from the city. But the shepherd does not abandon his flock, so he went back. And then he was exiled again. He spent a little time preaching in the country area around Ravenna, but then he tried to return to his people in the city. So if you're keeping track, this is the third time. The pagans tortured him and put him on a ship to Greece. They were like, okay, if beating is not enough, we'll just actually get rid of you. But the pagans in Greece didn't like him either, so they sent him back to Italy. And Apollinaris entered Ravenna 4 times now. 4th time, not a charm. It did not go well, and he was beaten and eventually died from his wounds after the 4th beating.
Wow.
Yeah, but if you feel nervous about evangelization, Apollinaris can maybe help you this week. Saturday is the feast of St. Lawrence of Brindisi, who spoke like every language that there is. And he was so good at them that the Pope asked him to preach to people all over. He preached to the Jews in Italy, and he was so good at speaking Hebrew that the rabbis thought that he might be a Christian, or that he might be a Jew instead of a Christian. It's just a really interesting Franciscan saint, Saturday. And then Sunday is the feast of my girl, St. Mary Magdalene. Maybe we'll talk about her later in the week because there's so much to say about her.
Yeah.
Sunday, St. Mary Magdalene.
To be continued.